let's start talking about Iran and Israel.
There's quite a bit to talk about, and this situation has been going on for a very, very long time.
Well, I guess what I want to know is, how did we get here? What's currently going on? And then where do we go? Like, where are we going to go from here?
This whole thing started in 1979. There was a revolution in Iran. Basically the Ayatollahs, the extreme Muslims in Iran overthrew the Shah. Now the Shah had been basically installed by the West after World War II. So the Iranians were generally suspicious of him, and the Shah he ruled with an iron fist. You didn't step out of line in Iran. So he wasn't popular amongst the Iranians. Now, back in the early 70s, I had Iranians in my Air Force pilot training class. Actually, one of them rode to New York with me. I got friendly with them. To this day, I wonder whatever happened to them. So our relationship with Iran was, the Shah may have been a lot of things, but he was a good friend of the West, and particularly a good friend of the United States. Right up to the point where we were training in our pilot training bases throughout the South. We were training his Air Force pilots.
Well, for what? Why are we training his Air Force pilots?
They didn't have a pilot training facility.
Why are they trying to build an Air Force? Just because?
Oh, everybody in the Middle East, every other country likes to have a little bit of an Air Force. I remember the Iranian pilot saying to me, we buy our airplanes from the United States and we buy our tanks from the Russians. That was the case back then. So at any rate, but the Shah wasn't particularly popular. He was overthrown, and Ayatollah Khomeini at the time was the one who came to power. And ever since then, Iran has been by the way, the proper way to pronounce it is Iran. That's how the Iranians pronounce it. They don't say Iran. So Iran has been a theocracy, a state run by religious clerics. And unfortunately, these religious clerics happen to be extreme. They happen to be radicals.
And an Ayatollah is like their pope?
Yeah, that's probably the best analogy. He's like their pope, but it's almost like the pope. Well, the pope does run the Vatican, so he does run a country, but that's the smallest country in the world. Ayatollah, the Ayatollahs run Iran, and Iran is twice the size of Texas. So it's, put in perspective, it's a big country.
Who's currently the Ayatollah of Iran?
He has a name like Khomeini.
Is he involved at all in what's going on?
He absolutely is. As a matter of fact, Israelis last week planned to assassinate him just like they did the other military leaders. And apparently we're hearing on the news, we never really know what's true and what's not, what you hear on the news, but apparently Trump discouraged him from taking out the Ayatollah. The reason being, if you, it's kind of like assassinating the Pope. You assassinate the religious leader and you alienate an awful lot of people that otherwise might be on your side. There might be a lot of Iranians who don't like the current government structure, but they don't want to see their religious leader assassinated. And also, if you go back to the analogy of World War II, the Japanese, in theory, the Japanese were ruled by Emperor Hirohito, who was considered a god by the Japanese. But the military high command in the late 30s had wrested power away from the emperor and pretty much ran Japan. But the emperor was the titular head of the Japanese empire. And we deliberately did not bomb the royal palace in Tokyo because we thought it would inflame the Japanese even more. Then they'd have a real good reason to fight to the death. Also, somehow the U.S. kind of thought, they wanted, after the war was over, when the Japanese finally surrendered, they wanted a reasonable person to be there to say, okay, this is what's going to happen. We've surrendered. We got to go along with it. And ultimately, that is what happened. But I don't know if the Ayatollahs would have followed that model or not. Well, would follow that model. But if you assassinated the Ayatollah, the theocratic ruler of Iran, there's thousands of other Ayatollahs, other religious leaders waiting to step in. So it probably wouldn't make much difference.
So are they more like the Sadducees and Pharisees of like the Roman Empire, somewhat? Because it seems like there was many of them, right? There wasn't just one Pharisee. There was many Pharisees.
Right. There's not an analogy there.
Okay. Israel attacked Iran.
Right.
Recently,
There's something to remember. We're hearing on the news, depending on which news you listen to. I heard a survey, 85% of Americans do not want Iran to have a nuclear bomb, but 100% of Americans do not want us to get into another protracted 20-year war like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, where we sacrificed a lot of blood and treasure. In Afghanistan, we ended up leaving behind billions of dollars worth of arms. So Americans do not want that. But there is something that should be stated. Since 1979, we have essentially been in a proxy war with Iran, an undeclared proxy war. We have been fighting against the Iranians, or at the very least, the Iranians have been fighting against us. So in October of 1983, when the Marine barracks in Lebanon was blown up, killing 241 United States Marines, and another barracks was blown up, killed over 100 French Marines, it was the Iranians who were behind that. And that has been well established. The Iranians through Hezbollah. The Iranians have been supporting and funding 3 really nasty proxy groups in that whole region. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, which is Hamas is kind of the descendant of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which Iran was also funding under Yasser Arafat. And they also fund the Houthis, which is a rebel group in Yemen. What do the Houthis do? The Houthis disrupt commerce. They disrupt the sea lanes going around the Arabian Sea and up in through the Straits of Hormuz into the Persian Gulf. Tremendous disruption of world sea lanes, and that's where oil travels plus other things. So nobody likes the Houthis, but Iran has contributed billions and billions of dollars. They may be a big country, twice the size of Texas, but they're not particularly wealthy. They have oil. But they've contributed billions of dollars from their national treasure to fund these 3 proxy groups that have been responsible for, as of now, tens of thousands of deaths. And there is a tremendous amount of American blood on their hands as well. So for all intents and purposes, we have been in an undeclared proxy war with Iran since 1979. And
all these groups that are getting funded, they're all attacking Israel?
Israel is their number one enemy. Why? Because they've decided that it is.
It's got to be bigger than that, just deciding that it is.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Israel is a tiny country, roughly the size of New Jersey, and then you have Iran, twice the size of Texas. Why do the Iranians harbor such animosity toward the Jewish state? They truly believe that the Jewish state is the devil, and Allah wants the devil destroyed, and it is their religious duty to do that. And that's a very dangerous situation when somebody is possessed of that kind of ideology. It's not like we want to attack Israel because they're damming the river and cutting off our water supply, and we have to, or they have been encroaching on our territory, or they've been causing other problems for us. They want to destroy Israel. It's simply a religious, ideological passion that the Iranians possess, and that makes it very, very difficult. And the United States is right behind them in terms of that animas, but we're a little bit more difficult to destroy than Israel.
So do you know where it comes from? Where this started? Why Iran dislikes Israel? Is it thousands of years ago? Is it hundreds of years ago? Is it
a modern day Israel is home of the 12 tribes of Israel that goes back 3,000, 4,000 years. And so there have always been indigenous Jewish people who practice the Jewish faith in that region. There were also Arabs in that region that lived side by side. In the year 79, Emperor Titus, the Roman emperor, the Jews were always in rebellion from, let's say, 100 BC up. When the Romans came in, 50 years before the time of Christ, took over the Eastern Med, the Jews have been rebelling against Roman control. And there were constant rebellions. There were constant zealots who led those rebellions. When Christ is crucified, Barabbas is not a thief or an outlaw. He's basically a rebel leader. And there are those there's a great book written called The Zealot that suggests that Christ was also a leader of this rebellion, because the Jews felt that this land had been given to them by God, and they had a moral obligation to defend it. And here now the Romans took over the land. They have a moral obligation to kick the Romans out. So they were constantly rebelling. And because of that, in the year 79, Emperor Titus, the Roman emperor, came in and sacked Jerusalem, enslaved many, many of the Jews, and took them back to Europe with him. And they dropped them off in different places across Europe. And that's why you have the Jewish faith all across, throughout all of the European countries. So Israel ceased to be a nation in the year 79. And they were not a nation. Then after World War II, so they hadn't been a nation for almost 2,000 years. After World War II, the West won World War II, of course, and the West was in control. Germany had, we believe, assassinated about 6 million Jews. They also eliminated somewhere around 3 million Catholics too, by the way. But there's 6 million Jews. And the West was kind of feeling a little bit of collective guilty conscience. The area of modern-day Israel at that time, from World War I, was a protectorate of the British. And the British wanted to get rid of it. They didn't want to be responsible because, once again, now there was a lot of fighting going on and discord. So the United Nations set up the Jewish state in 1948. They gave it borders, and there were the indigenous Jewish people who were always there. And then millions of European Jews, especially after the troubles during World War II, millions of European Jews emigrated to Israel as well. They weren't indigenous. I mean, basically, the indigenous Arabs and Jews kind of share the same gene pool. And now you have the people coming from Europe in there. So Israel is populated by European Jews as well as the indigenous ones. And when that happened, the Arab states just simply did not want a Jewish state to be formed. And they've been fighting against a Jewish state ever since 1948. So we had the war in the early 60s, terrible war between the Jews and Egypt. And then in October of 1973, we had the Yom Kippur War. The Syrians attacked Israel from the northeast, and the Egyptians attacked from the west. On the Israelis' holiest of holy days, Yom Kippur. And so the Jews were basically in a stand-down mode. They weren't expecting, and it's a long, complicated story how those two nations were able to surprise the Israelis, but they did. And in the end, the Israelis prevailed. They basically destroyed the Egyptian First Army in the Sinai Peninsula, and they took the Golan Heights from the Syrians. So that only inflamed the anti-Israel sentiments in the region.
Why did Egypt and Syria attack in the first place?
They didn't like Israel. They wanted to eliminate the Israeli state.
It just seems like there's a lot of hatred towards Israel.
There is a tremendous amount, and that hatred is manifest right now. We turn on the news and we see these demonstrations on college campuses and around the country. They are pro-Hamas, anti-Israel. I don't understand this groundswell of anti-Semitism. I don't understand. I don't know what percentage of our population is Jewish, probably less than 5%, but I don't understand all this hatred. And it's one thing, okay, so you don't like Jewish people, but you love Hamas, you love Gazans, Hamas, with what they have done and continue to do. It baffles me. You really asked the question a couple of times, why do they hate Israel so much?
I mean, this could
I don't have a good answer to that.
I don't understand why some of the people here even need to feel like they have to get involved in this.
Right. Who cares? I mean, why does somebody sitting on the campus of Berkeley University out in California, why are they going to go out and risk their diploma and waste time and go out and walk around with pro-Hamas picket signs and demonstrate on behalf of Hamas? I don't get it now.
Well,
but
I'm not even saying I'm for either side. I'm just saying, why do you feel like you need to get involved in choosing a side in this battle that has been going on for so long?
Why does the United States?
Why are these people protesting?
Well, there was a very deep running hatred of the Jews in Germany and Central Europe in the 30s as Hitler came to power. As Hitler was coming to power, he was blaming a lot of the Germans' troubles on the Jewish race, which I find peculiar as well. So for a sovereign government to exterminate 6 million of one kind of people, there was quite a bit of hatred there.
Okay, I'm going to jump a little bit. Is it true that Israel has not attacked anybody that hasn't attacked them first?
I'm thinking, I'm going to say the simple answer to that is yes. Israel has not. The two main wars in the Middle East were not started by Israel. And now, remember, Israel has become an ally of the United States. In that entire region that we call the Middle East, Israel is the only true democracy. There are theocracies, there are oligarchies, there are monarchies. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, but there's only one true democracy, and that's Israel. And like any other democracy, watching it function is like watching sausage being made. There's a lot of, infighting, and there's different parties in Israel, and they're not perfect, but neither are we. But they are the only democracy over there, and the only true friend of the United States. And have they ever? They have certainly initiated attacks on some of their arch enemies over there. In the early 80s, they blew up a nuclear plant in Iraq because the Iraqis were trying to enrich material.
Yeah, but if we go back, Israel attacks Hamas, but Hamas attacked on October 7th. Israel attacked in Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon, but Hezbollah attacked Israel first. Iran technically attacked Israel first, and now they're attacking back. Mm-hmm. So it seems like Israel gets attacked, they fight back.
Yeah, that is a valid statement. There have been some specialty raids on their enemies. There have been some preemptive strikes, like the attack on the Iraqi nuclear facility and so on. But for the most part, Israel is the prey, not the predator.
Just hypothetically speaking, say Israel goes away, right? Let's just say they go away. Who are all those people going to be upset with?
First of all, that's a very interesting question, because there is no unanimity of sentiment in the Middle East. You have several different, totally unique cultures that have been at war through all of recorded history and before that. So the Iranians are Persians. They got slammed by the Greeks, by Alexander the Great at the Battle of Gaugamela. The Persian Empire was defeated by the Greeks. They were fighting them. The Iraqis are the Babylonians, and the Babylonians were a great civilization at one point. The Egyptians are that. They're Egyptian, and they had a great society in the even in the early years of Israel. We call everybody generically Arabs. The only real Arabs are the Saudi Arabians. Arabia is where the Arabs come from, this whole Arabian Peninsula. And then you have smaller cultures. Lebanon Lebanon is the home of the ancient Phoenicians. The area we're in today, Gaza, is where Goliath was
By David.
The David and Goliath story. That's where the Philistines were a totally unique culture. Syria, the Assyrians. So you have all these unique cultures. Now, Muhammad comes along around the year 600, and many of these countries adopted Islam. But like Christianity, Islam became divided into many different sects. So you have the Sunnis and the Sufis, and they don't like each other at all, kind of like the Catholics and the Protestants in Ireland. And they'll fight each other. So I think if it's an interesting question. If for some reason Israel just completely went away, I don't know where they're going to go, but if they cease to exist as a nation, I think there would still be plenty of unrest in the Middle East, which brings us to a very interesting modern day question. If Iran was to have a verifiable nuclear weapon, and let's say they would prove it by testing it, and we would know that they tested it. It'll be an underground test. Probably. It could be an above ground test. But let's say Iran tests the nuke and says, okay, we got one, and we have this new missile we built that can deliver it 5,000 miles. If that happened, it would start an arms war in the Middle East. The Saudis would... the other Middle Eastern nations kind of regard Iran as a bully. They don't like the Iranians. They don't like the things the Iranians are doing. They don't like the way the Iranians are destabilizing the region. So if we woke up next week and Iran says, we really do have a weapon, first thing the Saudis would do is they would try to get a weapon, whether they bought one or whether they developed a program like Iran has done to build one.
Well, a couple things. Well, the reason I also said if Israel went away, what would the other countries fight about? Because a lot of people are comparing the leader of Iran to a Hitler, that he is somewhat like a Hitler, that even if Israel went away, they still believe that their way is the way, that there is kind of what's the term that Hitler used to use, that
the Aryan race, Aryan supremacy.
Like, the Iranians, so whatever the equivalent is to that they would just then try to believe that their way is still the way, and they would attack other countries.
I think, and this opinion is shared, Iran would like to be the ruler of that entire region. Iran would like to be the just through hegemony, they would like to be the 600-pound gorilla that controls that entire region, that controls the commerce in the region, controls the shipping lanes. And if they had a nuke, of course, they'd have the leverage to do that. So I think if Israel was not there, the Iranians would be fighting. There'd be tension between the Iranians and the other nations. So in a very bizarre way, Israel is doing Egypt, Syria, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, is doing all of these other nations, the Iraqis even, doing them a big favor by preventing Iran from becoming that 800-pound gorilla that they are destined to become if they are allowed to pursue a nuclear device. Now, I believe Iran is a sovereign nation, and other nations do not have the right to tell them what kind of a weapon they can or can't build. There's currently, I think it's 8 nuclear powers in the world today. North Korea recently joined that elite group. There was 7 nuclear powers. If Iran got the bomb, it would be a terrible thing for the whole region. So Israel's doing the rest of them a favor, and they're quietly appreciating that.
You think so?
Yes.
I mean,
Saudi Arabia and Egypt, they're not going to come out and say they don't want to be friends with Israel. They have agreements with Israel, some of them now, but the Abrams Accords and the Camp David Accords, where some of the nations have entered into peace treaties where they agreed not to fight each other. But I think they're quietly cheering the demise of this Iranian regime right now.
I did see the interview with the Saudi Arabian prince. It was 7 years ago. He did say, if Iran builds a nuclear bomb, that we're going to have to go find one. That we're going to have to find one to arm ourselves.
And
so what you're saying about the arms race.
Yeah.
So you think that by Israel attacking these nuclear power plants or their uranium deposits, what is it called?
The centrifuges? I mean,
yeah, if they're by attacking these nuclear power plants in Iran, that they're doing everybody else a favor by not allowing Iran to build these nuclear bombs?
So what I said a moment ago is Iran is a sovereign state, the ancient Persian Empire. They have a right to build whatever bomb they want. But when you spend the last 40 years telling everybody who will listen that you're going to bomb Israel first, then if you have the range, the death to America, you'd like to destroy all American assets in the area, anything that involves the American presence, you're going to destroy that. And in other words, Iran has told the world, whether they're blowing smoke or rattling sabers, but they've never missed an opportunity to tell the world when they get a nuke, they're going to use it.
Why isn't that spoken about a lot? Because I've seen those chants of the Iranians saying death to America, death to America. Why isn't that being spoken about enough? And why aren't past presidents like maybe even Biden or Obama or Bush coming out and saying, this has been going on for a long time? 4
presidents have vowed to prevent Iran from getting a nuke. That's going back to Clinton. And here we are. It may be Trump might be the only one who finally does prevent them, but they get closer and closer all the time. So what some of those other presidents did was they entered into they kicked the can down the road. They entered into agreements with Iran where, okay, you're going to reduce the amount of enrichment you're engaging in. You're not going to enrich for another 5 years, and then you can start, and all these crazy agreements. Iran believes for religious reasons that if you are a heathen, if you are a non-believer, it's okay to lie to you. So it's okay to sign an agreement that says we will not create a nuclear bomb, and then the United States or the West gives them a various aid and buys their oil and so on like that. So these past presidents have entered into agreements, and Iran has no problem violating those agreements because it's okay in Islam to lie to your enemies, to lie to the infidels.
Have we bought Iranian oil?
Over the years, we've bought a lot of Iranian oil, or there's a boycott on now. But the Chinese really don't have a lot of their own oil, and the Iranians are selling oil to the Chinese. As long as the Chinese are buying it, Iran will be a wealthy country.
Okay, so let's jump back. So Israel strikes Iran recently, a few days ago. And that's on the orders of Netanyahu.
Netanyahu and his staff. The Knesset is the Congress in Israel, and everybody would be looped in. I don't It's not just Netanyahu making that decision. It's a collaborative decision. And Netanyahu, as the president, gives the order, of course. But I don't think Netanyahu is acting unilaterally.
You don't think Netanyahu's a bit of a chicken hawk who just...
Netanyahu is very hawkish. There's no doubt about it. He's hawkish in the defense of Israel. And there are those who have said... pusillanimity, that's faint-heartedness, pusillanimity against these Islamic enemies is in and of itself a provocation.
But why now? Did he feel like Iran was was there intel that he had that Mossad was able to find that says they're coming this close to building a nuclear bomb, we got to take it out now?
I believe so. I believe the Iranians are less than a year away from
close.
Now there's one thing. First, you've got to enrich the nuclear material. You've got to make uranium-235 that comes out of the ground, out of mines, into uranium-238. You do that with centrifuges, and you have to get enough of that and coalesce it into weapons-grade material, and that's a slow process. So first you've got to get the material, the nuclear material, and then you have to make the bomb work, because a nuclear bomb, you can go online and find out how it works, but for you to go build one in your basement is a whole different thing. It's difficult. It takes a very high degree of technology to actually build it. Then you have to have a delivery system. And when you put a nuke on the top of a ballistic missile, launch that missile, there's a lot of shaking and rattling and rolling, and when it impacts the ground, it's got to go off. Everything has to happen with incredible precision. So it isn't that easy. So it has taken Iran a long time. But now they have gotten to the point where they are probably less than a year away from actually having a device that they can detonate. And when they do that, all bets are off. So, but there is all, in the news, so today is Wednesday, the 18th. In the news last night, this morning, Iran made an announcement. They have a surprise coming that will be remembered for centuries. Okay. Now they often speak in this superlative like that. They always embellish and exaggerate and so on and so forth. So it could just be war talk, and it's nothing to it at all. But it struck me, what if Iran has gone out and bought a nuclear device from North Korea? Would North Korea sell Iran a bomb? Yeah. Would China or would Russia? Iran is now supplying Russia with missiles, supplying Iran with drone technology. That's amazing that Russia is so backward. They have to buy them from Iran, but there could be a little bartering going on. Russia, you might say glibly, has a surplus of nuclear weapons. Both the United States and Russia made on the order of 10, 15,000 nuclear bombs during the Cold War. And then we've entered into various treaties where we had to limit the number of arms that we actually kept in our arsenals. And so both the Russia and the United States have all these extra bombs lying around. What if Iran has one, and the reason they have not used it is simply because they know what the repercussions would be, and the repercussions would be astounding. If somehow Iran managed to acquire a nuclear weapon, deliver it and use it against an adversary, Iran as a Persia as a civilization would be erased from the face of the earth, the repercussions. And maybe when they're up against the wall, back on their haunches, like what's happening now in Iran, Their army, they don't have an army to speak of. Their Air Force is being destroyed. Their air defense system is being destroyed. Their Navy is a couple of small gunboats. They don't have a lot left. And if they really feel cornered like a rat, backed into a corner, maybe they would use this. Now, we have the technology. We know where different kinds of uranium ores have come from. If they got a bomb from North Korea and they put it on a truck and drove it into Tel Aviv and detonated it, we would be able to figure out from the residual where that uranium had come from.
That's crazy.
And that's some science I don't fully understand, but I know it's there. So North Korea really may give them a bomb to intimidate people with. But if Iran, manages to detonate a nuke in an Israeli city, we're going to know where that material came from, and that's going to implicate, and it's not going to go well for North Korea either.
It kind of sounds like, though, do you fight a nuclear bomb with a nuclear bomb?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's not good.
I think it would take a remarkable amount of constraint on the part of the West. And in particular, now, remember, Israel is a nuclear power. They have a considerable arsenal of nuclear weapons. France, England, Italy were given nuclear weapons by the United States. Israel basically builds their own. And whatever technology we have in terms of the construction of the bombs, the delivery system, they are just as good, if not better in some cases, because their scientists are so good. And so I think Israel would answer a nuclear attack with a nuclear attack.
That's not good.
No, it would be the second time in the history of mankind that nukes were fired in anger. And so that's, and I think for Israel right now and for the current administration in the United States, the issue is we need to change the regime. We need to somehow disabuse them of this centuries-old animosity, and we can't allow them to acquire and use a nuke. And if, in fact, they already have one, we have to make sure that we remove the people from power who would actually use it.
I don't like the word "we" need to remove that. What about if the Iranian?
I'm sorry, we.
I don't like that we need to remove the regime. Because I did see someone speaking currently. He was an Iranian, and he was saying how he does not like the current regime that's going on in Iran. He was saying that as an Iranian, the current regime are terrorists to Iran.
The current theocracy is extremely oppressive to the average Iranian on the street.
So why can't we let the Iranians overthrow and put a new regime in there?
That's an excellent point. Let's just talk for a second. If one of the things Iran has done is they've spent billions and billions of dollars of their treasure on supporting these proxy groups. That's money that's leaving the country. It's not going back into infrastructure, building schools, building hospitals, building new roads, building industry. And so the poor Iranian on the street suffers. It's just like in North Korea. Kim Jong-un, or who's now?
I think it's Un.
He has palaces all over. He lives an incredible wealth, but the average Korean is starving, and so the Iranians suffer from a weak economy, and they're not able to enjoy the fruits of the oil wealth that Iran has, because Iran keeps sending it out to fight other battles that the average Iranian doesn't care about. And then also the rules of Islamic law are so restrictive. So if a woman gets on a bus in downtown Tehran and she doesn't have a proper burqa, head scarf, and all that, she's thrown in jail. And this is the year 2025, and we have gotten away. The rest of the world has kind of gotten away from that notion that God really wants her to wear this headdress, and if she doesn't, she should be punished.
Who's the current leader of Iran?
Well, the Ayatollah.
I know, but who's the
president? I'm not sure what his name is right now.
How did he come to power?
There's an election. He is elected.
Like a real election?
No, they're not. They're not real elections. They get elected, but only those that are approved by the theocracy are allowed to run and allowed to win, and they answer to the theocracy.
You know how long he's been in power?
Current president been there like 2 years, I think.
Oh, that's not long.
Don't quote me on that. But we thought when he came to power, because he was a little more progressive. We should Google that right now, what his name is. I can't pronounce a lot of those names anyway. But when he came to power, the West thought maybe he was going to be a little more progressive. Maybe he would take Iran out of this backward situation they're in, where they're ruled by strict Sharia law.
So, because you're saying are the Ayatollah the bad guys then, or is it the president?
The Ayatollahs are, to the extent in their mind, they're super religious. God loves them, but to the West, they are the ones that are making all of the trouble and the mischief in the region.
All in favor of God.
Yes, because they think that that's what God wants them to do.
I'm just going to segue for a second, but Soleimani, Trump took him out 6 years ago or so?
Yes.
Why? He was Iranian, right?
He was one of the Iranian. He was the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And that is, so Iran has a regular army and they have the Revolutionary Guard, which is kind of their SS. If we go back to a German analogy, the SS were the stormtroopers. They were the super elite military that was answered directly to Hitler. And so in Iran, you have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and they almost answer directly to the Ayatollahs, and that's the wing of their military. That's the fiercest and basically does all the things we don't like. And Soleimani was a leader, and he had helped to plan certain raids on American assets, and he had American blood on his hands. And so he was one of the top 10 most wanted people around the world by the West. And Trump took him out at an airport. I think it was an airport in Syria or Iraq. I'm not sure. Oh,
so he didn't strike in Iran. He struck in another country.
I think I'm not sure about this. I think he might have been at
I think it was like
Baghdad. He was at the airport, and we knew where he was, and we hit him with I believe it was a missile strike, and the missile may have come from a drone, but we knew where he was, and we hit him.
I watched this movie. I think it was Brad Pitt. It could be someone else. They said, okay, say you have, and I could be getting this wrong, but say you have 2 terrorists. And you killed 2 terrorists. How many terrorists do you have left?
Oh, who said this?
I think it's in a movie. I think it's Brad Pitt in a movie.
Oh.
And the answer is, he said the answer is 20.
Yeah.
And he said, with every 2 that you kill, you've now incited a family member who's pissed off, another group that's pissed off, another person that's pissed off. So, I mean, you kill Soleimani and you've pissed off another group of people. So you may have killed 1 terrorist, but you created 20.
And that's the danger. Where do you stop? But do you just let them propagate their evil ways, what we consider to be evil, and they get worse and worse, and they become more and more powerful, and they become more and more wealthy? So where do you stop? Do you have to wipe out the entire Iranian population? Can't do that. But I think this is anything that Israel does. They are strategic thinkers. They're long-term thinkers, not just tactical. These are tactical attacks that are going on right now, but there is a long-term plan, and I'm going to speculate that for the Israelis, they are hoping that somewhere in this mess over there, that the more moderate, more progressive Iranian leadership will rise to the top and create a new government where the Ayatollahs don't have as much power.
But then rise to the top and what, become more Western?
I don't think you're ever going to make the Iranian people into a Western society. They're just to inculcate them with our Western values is certainly not going to happen in our lifetime.
Well, I don't think that's fair to them either, though, to just try to put our values onto them.
They can have whatever values they want as long as those values aren't the destruction of another nation. That's their problem. And as I said earlier, do we have a right to tell them they can't have a nuclear bomb? We probably, technically, international law and all that, we really don't. But when you're telling everybody for 40 years, you're going to build a bomb, and as soon as you get one, you're going to blow up an Israeli city, and that would start a nuclear conflict, because Israel will, if they ever squeeze off a nuke, manage to detonate a nuke in the state of Israel, Israel will attack overwhelmingly with a nuclear a strike, and it will start basically. And now we have a nuclear war in the Middle East, and nobody wants that.
Who's going to come to Israel's aid, though? If that were to happen, if they detonate a bomb in Israel, who else in the world is going to say this can't happen other than America, England, France?
Israel, and it's just part of this a worldwide undercurrent of anti-Semitism. France might, Britain might, but I don't know how involved they would get. Then I don't think they're going to launch their nukes. It would primarily be the United States would come to Israel's aid. Would we lob a nuke into Iranian territory? Probably not, especially if the Israelis have already launched several and taken out a couple of Iranian cities, key Iranian military bases. If the Israelis detonated several nukes in Iran, the United States probably wouldn't feel a need to send any more in, but we would side with Israel.
You don't think, though, that with all the Israel attacks recently, Iran then starts shooting ballistic missiles back at Israel, they want to just eventually deplete their munitions?
Yeah, they absolutely will. There's the news this morning. Once again, you listen to the talking heads and the pundits, but sources inside Israel have indicated that the Israelis have destroyed 40% of the Iranian ballistic missiles. Now, a lot of these ballistic missiles are mobile. So they're not the real big city busters like we have, the real big intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're on mobile launches, flatbed trucks they drive around, so they're not that huge. But I heard one estimate they had 3,000, another estimate they have 2,000, and the Iranians are building their own missiles. They're not getting them from somebody else. So if we destroyed 40% of them, and they've fired another, they've probably fired 500. Let's say they had 3,000. And so we've destroyed 1,200. I mean, the Israelis, destroyed 1,200. They've fired 500. They are starting to run out of ballistic missiles.
Well, what happens then?
I think
if there's just a ceasefire until they build more missiles?
Yeah. I mean, if this is going to turn into a war of attrition, Iran loses big time, because they're out of everything. And then the issue right now, okay, so Iran's a very big country, very spread out. However, Israel has probably taken out their most important targets, which would be air defense systems. So when you take out air, you shoot the missiles, the surface-to-air missiles that would be fired, and you also destroy the radar sites that control those missiles. That's been done all across Iran.
That's what they're mainly targeting right now, right?
Yeah, and they're targeting the Iranian Air Force. You've seen pictures on the news where they've blown up F-14s, very old airplanes they got before the Shah fell in 1979. Those are airplanes that go back to the 70s, so they're really vintage airplanes. And I don't even know how they can be flying them because we're certainly not selling them parts.
But they're also taking out leaders as well, right?
And they're taking, decapitating the top of the leadership, which is really interesting. The fact that they know precisely where these guys are. Trump put out a tweet on X there. He said, I know who you are to the Ayatollah. You're hiding in, and I know exactly where you are. You're in a pretty good sheltered spot, but we can get to you. And he put that out. And
when was that?
Less 48 hours.
Oh.
And the reports in the news say that Trump discouraged Netanyahu from doing that, going after the Ayatollah. So there's not much left after once they've fired all those missiles and they've used up all their drones. What then? Well, what would happen is we would choke off Iran economically.
Yeah, but how do we do that if China's still buying oil?
We say that we're going to create an embargo around a blockade around Iran. We announce an international blockade. We have to get support of other nations. Any ship sailing in and out of Iranian ports will be sunk. And so, I mean, that gets ugly.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
It sounds like it can get ugly.
It gets ugly if you sink a Chinese ship that's going in there and getting oil. But first thing you do, you destroy those pumping facilities, those ports where the oil is pumped onto tankers and where the docks are and the pumping equipment. You destroy that so they can't even fill up a foreign oil tanker with oil. So you crush their economy. And that would probably be the next step.
Wouldn't that just bring other people to rise up and say, look what America's doing to us, and now we're their main enemy?
Yep. Whenever we do anything, people hate us.
Yeah, but why do we keep getting involved? Other than that, I know that Iran has been saying death to America, and they've been saying this for a while. It just seems that it's going to be a never-ending battle.
The older I get, the more of an isolationist I become. And Trump got elected saying that he did not want to get involved in foreign wars. So this is a little bit contrary to what really makes sense for us. But I think the bottom line is Iran has been a troublemaker, has created enormous instability in that region for 40 years now. And they do it for religious reasons. Now, and if we, the United States and Israel, see this as a final opportunity to put an end to this mischief that they've been creating by eliminating forever their ability to go back and make a nuke. And so are we going to take this opportunity, or are we going to kick the can down the road? And then 10 years, I heard an interview with General John Kane, very interesting guy, went to Fordham, and he's from New York. He was a 4-star general. And he said he believes Iran's willing to take the punches, take the blows, and then with the thought, well, if we have to start all over again, we will. But 10 years later, we'll have a nuke. But so right now, I think the long-term objective of Israel and the United States is to completely eliminate their ability to build one in the near future. Secondly, is regime change. Always a bad thing when we get involved in wars of liberation and regime change and things like that. But hopefully that a more progressive government rises in Iran. And one of the things is, if you can stop being if you say to Iran, you can stop being so obsessed with this religious need to destroy Israel and just start worrying about prosperity for your own people. Stop fighting the West, and let's sell more oil than we've ever sold before. Let's have Western investment come in, and but of course, the really strict religious leaders find all that corruptive and corrosive and anti-Islam, and so they don't want any Western stuff in there. But
if Iran's been attacked for so long, you're saying 40 years, so maybe 2 generations, right, of people just having this deep-seated resentment against the West and against Israel. How do you change the minds of people like that? Like that, if I was, let's just call Pennsylvania, Israel, and South Carolina, because they're pretty close, right? Israel and Iran are not that far apart. Let's just say that. And South Carolina's been attacking Israel or attacking Pennsylvania for so long. Like for 2 generations, I would have a deep-seated resentment against, South Carolina.
There's a lot of deep-seated animus there, but the simple, how do you get these new generations of Iranians to see things this way, that you can enjoy prosperity and you don't have to violate your religious principles? And I think the answer, how does that happen? The internet. Oh. Because of the internet, anyone with a cell phone or a small computer can see what the rest of the world is doing. So if the citizens of Iran are being told by their religious leaders that the West is evil and that they're all suffering they live this terrible, decadent life, and on and on you go. But if you have the internet, you can actually go and see what the rest of the world really is living like. So
we give them Starlink or something like that gives them full access to the internet for free?
If you introduce Starlink in there into Iran. But I mean, still, I think it's just like North Korea, you cannot get on the internet. Somehow they've managed to cut the internet off. China's done a lot to cut off access to the outside world. And I believe Iran has too. And of course, the people are poor enough where they don't necessarily have the devices. But all in all, the internet has a way of finding its way in, and that's a way that the people can see how the rest of the world really is living.
So you're saying that the Ayatollah might be the true chicken hawks in this, like the ones who are willing to start the wars but not fight it themselves, have other people fight it for them?
Well, the Ayatollah is not going to put on a uniform and grab a gun and go out and fight. No, but right now, Israel has the capability to kill the Ayatollah, and he's got to realize that. So he is threatened.
You mentioned, though, that Trump was talking about the bunker busters going in there. And
this is a really important issue with this whole conversation. Fordow, F-O-R-D-O-W, Fordow, is the site, like our Cheyenne Mountain. We have Cheyenne Mountain out in Colorado. We tunnel deep inside one of the Rocky Mountains, and that's where our North American Defense Command is, the main headquarters for defending the U.S. against any attack, particularly a nuclear attack. The Iranians have done the same thing. They have tunneled into the side of a mountain, and they're hundreds of feet below ground, and it's probably surrounded by granite, and they probably have reinforced concrete in there as well. So that right now, my understanding from watching the news is that the Israelis really haven't even attacked it yet, because they do not have the capability to penetrate this, and they can blow up the entrances, the tunnels. They can maybe blow up the air shafts and isolate it a little bit. But as far as damaging the whole structure inside, they haven't been able to do it. They need the U.S. bunker buster, which is a 30,000-pound bomb. It's a massive bomb. I mean, when the B-52s drop these iron bombs, gravity bombs, they're dropping 500-pounders, which are devastating in their destruction. This is a 30,000 pound bomb.
The weight or the explosion's 30 pounds?
The explosive material is measured in poundage. So a 500 pound bomb doesn't weigh 500 pounds. It's a measurement of the dynamite that's inside it, the explosive material. So a 30,000 pound bomb is an enormous explosion. When you have bombs that big, you're almost equating it to kilotonnage. You're getting the explosive equivalent of a small nuclear device. The devices dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki weren't terribly big compared to what we have today. And they were almost on the level of some of the larger conventional explosives we have. So a 30,000 pound bomb that also has the ability to penetrate reinforced concrete or granite, and then explode is really, it's devastating. And right now, the only airplane that can carry it is the B-2 stealth bomber. And the way to destroy this facility is to go in with a stealth bomber, drop the first one, which would make an enormous crater, fire another one right into that crater, and eventually you destroying anything that goes down 3 or 4 or 500 feet. But the U.S. is the only country that has that particular munition and the means to deliver it. So the odious question for President Trump right now is once he squeezes off that, he's involved. We've now bombed Iran. I think the U.S. was waiting for Iran to do something stupid like fire a missile at or a drone attack at one of our naval assets out in the Persian Gulf, because they're right there. They're obvious. They're right off the coast of Iran, and they're real accessible targets. I think getting through our Aegis class cruisers with their defensive systems would be very difficult. It would be unlikely Iran would be able to successfully sink or damage a U.S. naval ship. But if they just fired at one, that would give us the excuse to go in and attack this.
That would be our Gulf of Tonkin.
Oh, it's Gulf of Tonkin. That's another complicated story. That's back in the 60s.
Yeah, but that would be our Gulf of Tonkin, like our entry into the war.
Yeah, it would give us the reason the excuse to go in and bomb this Fordow facility. But I think we may do it anyway. It seems to me, listening to the reports coming out of this national security session yesterday in Washington, is that Trump is leaning toward doing that anyway. Because if they go in and all the bombing and all that's gone on, and the number of sorties and everything, but if we leave that one facility intact, well, we've only slowed Iran down a little bit. So I think before this thing is over, Iran is either going to voluntarily dismantle that site with outside inspectors, or we're going to destroy it. And I think if the U.S. does not elect to go in with the B-2 bomber, I think the Israelis will go in there with a commando unit and just basically kick down the doors and destroy it that way.
Oh, really?
The Israelis did that in southern Lebanon only less than a year ago.
They're going to get boots on the ground?
Israel will send in a Hezbollah in southern Lebanon had an underground facility, deep underground, where they were storing billions of dollars in munitions that were all designed to be used against Israel. And the Israelis realized that because it was so far underground that they could not, it was very difficult to destroy it with airplanes. So they sent in one of their elite commando units. They attacked it and went down into it and blew it up from the inside.
That's insane.
So
how did they get in there?
How did they get into it?
Were they fought or were they stopped by any fighting?
There were certainly Hezbollah soldiers there, but they were all killed. They were just wiped out.
Any Israelis killed?
I don't know.
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had some casualties, but they did it. And I think that is the Israelis' option if we don't attack this facility with one of our big bunker busters.
That Israel's going to get boots on the ground on that. You said something, though, when we were talking the other day about Israel had a site inside Iran, a drone site inside Iran.
Yeah, if you read, the story comes out here, the Mossad, the Israelis' intelligence service, their equivalent of our CIA, had heavily penetrated Iran. Now, one thing, everybody has their price, right?
Okay.
You can go into a country, and no matter how devout they are, no matter how loyal and patriotic they are, everybody has their price. So the Israelis go in and they start paying people off, and they start recruiting Iranians to help them. This entire operation was as much a Mossad operation as it was an Israeli Air Force operation. So they were already inside Iran, ready to blow things up, and they actually had been manufacturing the drones in a facility near Tehran. And so now these drones just all come flying out, and they have predetermined targets.
And Iran didn't know anything about this.
Apparently not.
That's insane. So they build a site because you got to bring in the materials to build the site, right?
Right.
So were they all, the Ayatollah didn't know that right under their nose a whole facility was being built? I
don't know. Hopefully someday a lot of this is all super classified Israeli stuff now, but it leaks out, and someday maybe somebody will write a book and get all this information, how they did it. So it might have been a site, where they were manufacturing automobile brakes or something.
Yeah, but they were secretly building something else.
Yeah.
So those attacks that happened in Tehran, a few days ago, a lot of them drones came out of that site and then attacked Tehran.
Certain amount of the drones came out of that, did the damage in and around Tehran.
The drones have to return home though, right? No, they can just.
They're suicide drones.
Oh, they're suicide drones. Those drones aren't dropping bombs.
So drones are cheap, especially if they're not going to go that far. And no, there's suicide drones. Yeah.
Oh, so the drones have bombs in them?
Right.
Oh, I thought all these drones were dropping bombs.
There are drones that drop bombs. I mean, you have the little tiny drones like we see people flying around town, which can deliver a warhead, a small munition, and all the way up to the things like the Reapers, that Global Hawks and the Reapers. Those are full-size airplanes that the United States has, and they are what do they call them? UAPs. They unmanned aerial type. They don't have a pilot. They're controlled by somebody on the ground, but and they're expensive, so you don't send them on suicide missions necessarily. But there are smaller ones that can be. The drone attacks that Ukraine just engaged in against the Russian strategic bomber force were suicide drones. Those drones weren't coming back to Ukraine.
Well, that's a different story. I mean, who's giving Ukraine all those drones?
I suspect the West, NATO nations. Britain's been helping Ukraine quite a bit but we are too. I mean, we've sent $100 billion, I think, is an extraordinary number what we've sent to Ukraine. And
I saw recently too. I think it was Iran does not like England either, right? So would England want to get involved in this as well? Like say Trump says, all right, we're gonna go try to send in those bunker busters. England doesn't have our back on that.
England would. Okay. I think they would. Yeah. I mean, they would.
No other countries like Egypt wouldn't have our back on that?
It's like we talked about earlier. I think many of the neighboring countries in the Middle East are quietly applauding Israel's efforts, but they just simply can't come out publicly and congratulate them.
Out of fear?
Oh, they just because nobody likes the Israelis, so
Oh.
it's ingrained in their culture, and they won't come out and say, "Great job, Israel." They're not going to do that. They're going to, but quietly in their private chambers, they are going, "Yes."
All right. Well, Trump just just made a statement to Tehran to evacuate, right?
Yeah, some of that is bluster, and Iran is also telling the people of Tel Aviv to evacuate too. So,
Oh, are they really?
yeah,
Well, that's kind of nice of them.
yeah. There's 9 million people in the city of. I have been to Tehran probably 7 or 8 times. I always felt, and this is back in the mid 70s before the Shah fell, we had a regular mission out of McGuire Air Force Base in the C-141 that went to Turkey. Well, it started off the Portuguese Azores, then we went to Turkey, and then we went to Tehran and kind of came back out a different way. We'd come through Greece on the way out. And we had like 5 of these trips a week. So they were regular runs. We were supporting the diplomatic mission in Iran, our U.S. diplomatic mission, supporting, we had military advisors there, and we were selling them airplanes, training their pilots. So we were supporting all the Americans. And I always remember being moved by, in Iran, the juxtaposition of the new and the old. So they had some big modern streets and monuments that looked like Paris or London or something. And then you just get off that little street and you're going back 1,000 years. Like we would go to the places where they would make rugs. And they had little kids tying the rugs because they needed small fingers and excellent eyesight to do this. And you go back in these old ramshackle, broken down mud huts kind of, and where that's how they're living and working. And so that I always was impressed by that juxtaposition of the 20th century and like the 5th century. So Iran was an interesting country. And
Has it evolved at all?
I don't think Iran has moved forward under the theocracy, under the religious leadership.
Is it because the leaders are afraid that if they give the people a little bit more power, that they're not going to have power anymore?
Well, they don't want the people to become secular. They don't want the people to embrace things of this world. So everything in Islam, everything is evil, including modern science. I once read a great article how Christianity, the Christian West, was finally able to move forward when they were able to separate science from religion. So you go back to the Renaissance, you have Galileo's put under house arrest because he says the sun, he said the earth goes around the sun, not the sun goes around the earth. And somehow the church found that to be in contradiction to the Bible, and they convicted and they took Galileo to court. They charged him. He ended up under house arrest. But at some point in the period of the Enlightenment, the West was able to separate that. They were able to the West realized that science does not contradict religion, that the two of them, in the early days, the early Greek philosophers, science and philosophy and theology were all the same discipline. And then we got into the Middle Ages where they all became, the scientists said we can only know through observation. The philosophers said we can only know truth through reason. And the theologians said we can only know truth through faith. So, but I believe that they're coming back to, they're really all the same discipline. But during the Enlightenment, the Christian West was able to separate out what we were discovering, the things we were discovering in science, and those discoveries did not contradict religion.
Yeah.
When for all intents and purposes, they enhanced it. when the West realized that, the West was be able to take off as a civilization and grow and advance. Islam is still stuck in that period where it's only your faith that matters. Faith is most important. And if science tends to deny faith, faith is correct. Islam has not been able to make that distinction, make that separation.
Isn't that kind of undermining God, though, to say that he can't be out? It's not saying he's omnipotent then, if you're not agreeing with some of the science, like saying that God didn't create the sciences.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to say God created the world, the Bible says the earth is the center of the universe. It doesn't really. But, if you take that interpretation from the Bible, why couldn't the omnipotent, omniscient God create a world where the earth goes around the sun?
Well, I mean, it's like
we just haven't figured out how he did it yet.
It's like going from the Stone Age to creating these missiles.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean,
intellectually, in many ways, certain Islamic countries are still existing in the dark ages. And until they can break out of that, they're never going to be able to join in this whole progressive ascension of mankind. They're holding their people back, holding it. And so how do you break through this right now in this particular crisis? You can't. It's not something you can wave a magic wand and do it.
They're gonna eventually, though.
I think eventually they will. And step number one is to remove any capability toward building a nuclear weapon. That's what the first goal of Israel and the United States, and to a certain extent, the Western nations, Western Europe.
So they're okay with some sciences.
They're okay with the scientists that build the that build the nukes. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And step number two, I think the long strategic goal here in Iran is to somehow create an environment where a more progressive government can emerge and carry Iran into the 21st and 22nd century.
Well, then how do they do that? By still keeping some of their values, but also being a bit more progressive. And progressive how? Like progressive in the way that the West sees it?
I mean, by a more progressive government, I mean a government that doesn't rule by Sharia law. So, I mean, Sharia law says a lot of interesting things. If you get caught stealing, and I remember flying trips into Saudi Arabia, the American military attaché would meet our airplane, and he was telling us one time they just had this was in Dhahran, they had some public punishments in the town square the day before, people who had been caught stealing, and they cut their hands off.
That's insane.
See, we would, in the West, we would say, no, we forgive people. We give them a chance to rehabilitate themselves, and maybe we punish them for it, but we give them a chance but we don't cut people's hands off.
Well, that's like ruling by fear.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fear that, okay, I won't steal because I don't want to get my hand cut off, instead of I won't steal because it's wrong.
Right.
You know? I mean, wouldn't God want you to have both your hands?
I would think. I don't think God wants you.
And how does he know which hand's the sinner?
It's a toilet story as to why they cut one hand off
and not both.
Are you aware of that?
No. What do you mean?
In Saudi Arabia, when you eat in a public setting, you eat with your right hand.
Yes.
Because when you go to the toilet, you use your left hand.
Yeah.
And so they cut off your right hand. You'd never put your left hand into the communal bowl. You just didn't, because that's the hand you use when you go into the bathroom. That's the hand you use your toilet paper with. And you can Google that.
Yeah, I have heard this.
And so they cut off your right hand. So you can't eat from a communal a bowl or dish or whatever. And you can't shake hands. You can't do anything. Nobody wants to touch your left hand.
Wouldn't you starve then?
Well, you got to eat by yourself all the time.
Yeah. But, oh man, so you got to eat with the same hand that you wipe with.
Yeah.
All right. So
That was true. I was in Saudi Arabia this a long time ago, and having the U.S. military attaché tell us about, they had just had a couple, and they also beheaded some people too. They had public executions, but they had chopped off some people's hands, and he was saying they're moving at the time. They now do it surgically. They don't just take a great big saber and cut it off, but they surgically remove your hand.
what, they numb it and then
I don't know. Do they
still actually cut people's hands off for stealing?
I don't know if they, to this day, this was 40 years ago, they were doing it in Saudi Arabia.
Have they progressed at all in any in the way that they think at all? Like, is there brutal things they used to do 40 years ago that they don't do today, that they think are wrong now?
This was Saudi Arabia, and they're all essentially different sects of Islam, but it's Islam. And I couldn't speak I'm not an expert on each country and how they've grown, if they have grown. But I think things have changed a little bit. In Iran, women could not go out without having their head and their face covered. Women could not drive cars. Women could not go to school. Women could not go to college.
Where does this come from, though? Because this wasn't always a thing. Did they create this religion and then all of a sudden say, you have to wear clothes, you have to wear hijab, you have to wear...
No, the Sharia law is strict about this, and women are the subservient sex to men. Women are subservient, and in Saudi, under Sharia law, whether you're in Iraq or Saudi Arabia or Iran, the different groups of Islam, but you can beat your wife.
So do the individuals protesting in America understand this, that they're protesting for countries over there that, are saying women are the lesser?
Yes.
Do they know about this or they don't know about this?
There's a group over here called Gays for Palestine.
Yeah.
And if you are gay in certain Islamic countries right now, you're put to death.
Well, have you heard about the Chara men in Afghanistan? A lot of these troops will come back from Afghanistan and they'll talk about that it's like the rape of young boys.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think they're called the Chara boys. Mm-hmm. And how boys are used for pleasure and women are used for procreation. And they have festivals and parades for it.
There's acts and actions over there that we would find absolutely abhorrent here in the West, and we would prosecute people for. You would go to jail for all of the things that you're allowed to do under Sharia law. And so that's sort of the mindset that you're dealing with now.
That's why I don't think people in the West who are out there protesting right now understand the underbelly that's going on, like this world that is happening over there.
Yeah, when you're walking around with a "I love Hamas" sign, you realize who Hamas really is. Now, Hamas is a political organization of Gazans, people who live in Gaza, and they are supported financially and with military supplies by Iran. So Hamas isn't a religion itself, but it's a group of people, a political organization that practices strict Islam and strict Sharia law.
I think they consider them Palestinians, right? Like the people who are protesting for Hamas are...
It's very interesting. So remember, in 79, Titus goes in and he sacks Jerusalem and he scatters the Jews throughout Europe. That 300 years later, a Roman cartographer is doing maps of the region. And the Philistines were in modern-day Gaza. That's David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine.
Goliath was, or David was? Who was a Philistine, Goliath or David?
Goliath.
Okay.
Goliath, yeah. David was a Jewish king. And
becomes a Jewish king or was a Jewish king at the time?
When he whacked...
I think he becomes one.
When he whacked Goliath with the slingshot, he wasn't a king yet, but he was in line. He was working his way up. So this Roman cartographer, map maker, in around the year 300, is drawing maps of the region, and the area of the modern Gaza Strip was the home of the Philistines, and he took that name Philistines and he changed it to Palestine. Philistine to Palestine. I don't know why he just did. So he called that whole region Palestine. So in that region, you had the indigenous Jewish people, and you had the indigenous non-Jewish people. So some people practiced Judaism in the region. Some people didn't. Now, Muhammad didn't come along till the year 600. So this is the year 300. So there is no Islam. Mm-hmm. So you have Palestinians, both the Israels and the Jewish people in the region, and the people who just simply didn't practice Judaism were both
Gentiles.
They were the same genes, the same.
But they're not Jewish.
They're not Jewish just because those families, those groups of people, those towns did not practice Judaism. So there was never a nation, Palestine.
Yeah, I understand.
So, and the term to say they're a Palestinian people, you might say you're describing the indigenous people of that region who happen to never have chosen Judaism as their form of religion. And many of those indigenous people eventually became Muslims as Islam spread throughout the area.
And then Muhammad had about 1 million followers when he died?
He had 1 million followers when he died. It was incredible. The Arabians, he was from Saudi Arabia, the Arabians did not have a religion. They did not have a God. They did not have a book, the Bible, the way that the Jews did. And a lot of them felt like, yeah, we need our own, and that's what Muhammad gave them. He gave them Allah, a God. He gave them the Quran. He gave them a book, and he gave them a religion to practice.
Well, I mean, if the people are looking for something at that time, they have nothing, and you give them something.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Egyptians did have their own religion.
Polytheistic.
And I think the Persians and the Babylonians did, but the Arabians kind of didn't have one, and Muhammad gave one. But then Islam spread rapidly across the other nations.
And Mecca's in Saudi Arabia.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And Medina, Mecca and Medina.
And that is, Mecca is equivalent to Jerusalem, right, for the Jews?
Yeah, but Jerusalem is also a holy city to Islam.
Why?
There's the Dome of the Rock. It's a. Is
that where Muhammad got his beliefs from? No,
he actually went out in the desert. Muhammad couldn't read or write.
Yeah, I know he's illiterate.
And his wife wrote down all of the.
Julia? Is that his wife?
I'm not sure what his name was.
Or her wife? Or his wife was Julia, I think, right?
Fatima was his daughter.
Fatima. Okay.
And she continued the line. Really? Getting back to Iran, so you have people who believe in that strict Sharia law, and consequently they're we would find it seriously distorted thinking. They're the people that would drag a young woman off a bus and throw her in jail because she didn't have her head covered. This is the people, if a guy just beats the hell out of his wife because she talked back to him, Sharia law would say, yeah, well, you're not supposed to talk back to your husband. He's allowed to do that. This is a country that thinks that way. And Iran, yeah. And so it's not going to change quickly, that's for sure. But I think the long-range goals are to somehow allow a more progressive, more Western forward-thinking, not a government that is not as tied to the Sharia law will arise in Iran and find out you're really better off doing business with the West rather than fighting the West all the time, calling them the devil and threatening to hurt them, and then spending large percentages of your national treasure fighting the West through proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. So that's, I think, is the long-term hope of this attack on Iran. The short-term tactical goal is to destroy the nuclear capability, and I think to finish that job, they need the B2, either the B2 or the commandos, a commando raid.
What if we just let Israel be and let them fight their war?
If we decide to do what?
If we just don't get involved at all, we just don't get involved at all, and we just let Israel fight their war.
We are involved. You know the difference between commitment and involvement?
No.
Okay. Did you ever have ham and eggs for breakfast?
Yeah.
You have ham and eggs for breakfast. The chicken is involved. The pig is committed.
Okay.
We are committed.
So we're in this.
I don't think we can step back and say, do whatever you want, Israel. Good luck. You know, we are.
Are we involved just because we back Israel?
Yes. We were also involved because we're tired of fighting this proxy war. We lost 241 Marines, and you know one of the few survivors very well.
Yeah, he was here. He was on this.
We lost 241 Marines. That was a decision made at the highest level in Iran.
It just seems like an eye for an eye for an eye for an eye constantly, though. So, I mean, they think we're the enemy. We think they're the enemy.
Well, we know anybody who is going to be attacking our assets around the world and threatening to wipe us off the face of the earth and threatening to wipe our ally Israel off the face of the earth, who does that is our enemy.
There's no Geneva Convention that can happen.
There's no
Geneva Convention that can happen. No Treaty of Versailles. No.
Though the Treaty of Versailles had the victors and the vanquished. That wasn't an armistice.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't just like two sides getting together and say, let's be rational and work something out. But at any rate, maybe someday, somewhere, there's some gifted diplomat will be able to will be able to sit down with Iran. And in a way, you know, one of the rhetoric that's coming from Trump, he says, we're not going to let you have a nuke. He said that once, he said it 100 times. And I think at this point in time in his presidency, when Donald Trump says he's going to do something, you might as well believe him.
Well, he's peace through force.
But what he is, I'm sorry, what?
He's peace through force, right?
Yeah, peace through strength.
Through strength.
But he has also said, after he says you will not have a nuke, he says, you know, we love the Iranian people. We want them to be prosperous. We want good things for them. Let us go in there and help their nation, bring their nation into the modern world and provide them with the things that prosperity provides you with, education, better medical facilities, athletic facilities, whatever you want to call it, libraries, and let everybody grow and prosper together and live full, enriched lives. But a lot of that full, enriched lives contradicts Islam. So, so Trump is he is using the carrot and the stick. The stick is, whether you like it or not, you can't have a nuke.
And what's
the carrot is, we will come in and help you prosper.
What if they don't want that? It seems like they don't want that.
The thinking.
What if he tricks them and says, you know, you get to create your terms of prosperity?
I think the thinking at the highest levels in the U.S. and in Israel and the West is that there are enough people in Iran right now who would like and would embrace some sort of Western prosperity. And I keep using the word prosperity and progressivism, and they may be a little bit confusing, but it's freedom. It's liberty.
But the leaders don't want them to have that, right?
No.
Because then they don't have power. But wouldn't they understand? I mean, maybe they don't understand. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe they would have even more power if they allowed something like this to happen. You know,
in the early days of I don't know about that, but in the early days of our country, in New England states were settled by people seeking religious freedom. They were running from religious persecution. The southern states like Virginia were settled by the more wealthy English. But up in New England, we had very right next to Marblehead, we have Salem. We had the Salem witch trials. So the leaders of those communities, Salem, Massachusetts, were devoutly religious people who believed that dancing was evil, and if you got
Puritans?
caught dancing, the Puritans, if you got caught dancing, well, you must be possessed by the devil, and the only thing we can do is we've got to kill you. And they hung people for being witches.
I mean, talking about going
and
back.
The Crucible is Daniel Day-Lewis is a wonderful movie called The Crucible, and it's about the Salem witch trials. And so when we think, how could a country like Iran be that way, where they're executing people for homosexuality? Well, how could they have a country like that? Well, we had elements of that right here in our own country a long time ago, but as our country was being formed. So it's not that hard to believe that there are countries like that there are leaders like that there are programs and policies like that.
Well, I mean, wasn't one of the later statements that George Washington made saying that we shouldn't get involved in foreign wars?
In George Washington's farewell speech, when after his second term, he warned against foreign entanglements. That was his term, foreign entanglements. Do not get involved in European wars. And it was extremely prescient on his part, because I think he's rolling over in his grave today, because we have gotten involved since in a lot of foreign entanglements. He also didn't like political parties. He warned against political parties. But that was sort of just sort of a natural progression in our country, in a democracy, to have
you have to have them, right?
People organize into people of like minds organize into parties. But Washington liked that. He just wanted the best man to run and to win, and in elections, he didn't want parties nominating people. But so today with Iran, I think. The things to watch now, if Iran does have some big surprise, probably not, but there's a possibility that there's something crazy will occur. Fordow, that their main enrichment site has yet to be destroyed, and that has to if you're Israel, that has to be taken out. Otherwise, this whole thing was for naught. And is it going to be taken out by a US B-2, or is it going to be taken out by Israeli commandos? Or however it is going to be taken out. And then the resolution of this whole thing, how is it going to end? Is Iran simply going to run out of missiles, and then they're not going to attack, they don't have an army to attack Israel?
Or they just say, all right, we won't do it. We won't build any nuclear sites.
It's possible Iran could say, come to the negotiating table and say, all right, we'll sign an agreement. We'll never build a nuclear site, and then do it anyway.
Well, okay.
The problem is remember I said earlier, under Sharia law, it's okay to lie to an infidel.
Yeah, but then we also get to go to the negotiating table and say, if you do this, right, there's terms.
If you do this, we'll start bombing you again.
Say Iran really does not like the United States or whatnot. The borders were open for 4 years. Do you think that any sleeper cells came across that border that are Iranian?
I'm quite certain that Iranian sleeper cells are in the United States.
And they can just start planning little attacks across the United States?
What they're going to do, I don't know. We never imagined the attacks of 9/11, that somebody could take down 3 airliners with box cutters.
That's for a different story, but we kind of did know. We did get intel that something like that was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah, that didn't surprise me. But talk about low tech apparatus that takes down, massive buildings and blows up the Pentagon.
All right. Well, if they do that, right? Do you think Iran's going to claim it? and say, "Hey, we did
The
it."
irony in that situation is, if you claim it, you're going to you're facing punishment for it. But if you don't claim it, what's the point? You want to take credit for it. I think we would figure out who it was. And this is low tech things like we just captured 2 different Chinese nationals smuggling in this fungus that destroys wheat and grain crops, cereal crops. And then what about, there's some deadly poisons that can be poured into water supplies.
Oh, they do that in one of the Batman movies, I think.
So there's a lot of low-tech ways that Iran could. And another scenario in this whole, it is a war that's going on right now, is that Iran may have certain actions like this planned, and now they've already gotten the crap beat out of them, so they don't care, and they're willing to take punches, and they're going to retaliate with some of these low-tech things we haven't even thought of yet.
I mean, it's a scary thing to think that these individuals, if they're doing it all just for God, this life that they have here currently on Earth is nothing compared to where they're going to go when they die.
I mean, of the 19 9/11 hijackers, they didn't all know they were going to die. We know that. The guys flying the airplanes knew, but the muscle in the back didn't know that they were going to die. They thought they were hijacking the airplane. They were going to land somewhere. Osama bin Laden, within weeks of that, was caught on film laughing about how these people didn't even know that they were going to die. But let's take the ones that were flying the planes, that knew they were going to fly the planes into buildings. They could very well believe that they were going to meet 72 virgins and be held in the highest esteem and honored by God when they died, that they were going to paradise because of what they did. And a religion that inculcates people with that notion, that teaches that, is very dangerous and very scary. And that's what we're dealing with.
Do you believe that you're being inculcated with anything in your mind right now? Do you think there's any beliefs that you have been taught that may not be right or real? You know what I mean? Like because if you just get indoctrinated at such a young age with something over there with their theocracy or their theology, is there anything over here that you believe that?
We are all products of our environment, and we're all products of our upbringing. And so we are all in our lives inculcated with ideas and notions and thoughts and all that. Absolutely.
Like maybe we're both wrong.
Are we? Yeah. So it's the old. When Pilate is interrogating Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
and Pilate says, "So you're a king," and he says, "My kingdom is not of this world."
Mm-hmm.
And so Pilate doesn't want to execute him, but the masses want it, but Pilate then says to him, and it's in Luke, I think it's only in one of the synoptic gospels, but Pilate says to him, "Well, who are you?" And Jesus says, "I am the way, the light, and the truth." And Pilate says, "What is truth?" One of the most poignant questions ever asked in all of the religions. Pilate's trying to, at least the author of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, has at least put these words in Pilate's mouth. Whether Pilate actually said them or not, I'm not sure, but it's extremely poignant. Pilate says, "What is truth?"
Yeah.
And that's kind of the question you're asking. So maybe we all have it wrong. Yeah, it could be.
All right. So to wrap this up here, does Netanyahu have any plans coming up?
He hadn't told, not that he's told me.
Because he seems to, well, he does say, hasn't he announced some of the plans before he's done them? Or does he just attack without letting anyone know what he's doing?
Well, he's not telegraphing his specific sites, but I think it's just what Netanyahu is saying the same thing that Trump is saying. Iran will not have a nuke. And we have
So that's the main thing that's going on right now, is that they believe that Iran is getting way too close to getting a nuke, and they're just going to stop it before it happens because they are claiming destruction to Israel and America.
They would like to prevent Iran from ever getting a nuke. But if they can't prevent them, because again, at least they want to eradicate their current nuclear program, so that Iran would have to start over again. It would be a very long time.
And they believe that Iran is just building a nuke so they could destroy Israel.
They're building nukes. One of their main objective is to destroy Israel, I believe, but also it's power. It's to spread their own gospel and to be the 800-pound gorilla in the region.
Because no one else in that region has a nuke right now.
Correct. Israel is the only one. No other. There are no.
Is there any side that you see for Iran right now? Like, if you were to take the side of Iran right now, do you see anything that they're doing that you'd be like, all right, well, maybe they're kind of correct for doing this?
Oh,
do they fear?
No,
anything?
not for the. We don't destroy a nation for religious reasons.
But so they're.
It's not. You see, it's not like Israel has a natural resource that Iran needs. It's not like Israel is cutting off the Iranian water supply. I'm just using these examples of reasons why, physical reasons why nations may go to war. It's not like Iran is afraid that Israel is going to attack them. Israel has attacked Iran after Iran attacked them first. So Iran has no reason to want Israel wiped off the face of the earth other than they think the Jews are infidels and God commands Muslims to kill infidels. That is, I believe, their fundamental reasoning rationale through this whole, all this fighting, through this 45-year war between Iran and the West, Iran and Israel.
This sounds like a modern day crusade.
Well, the Crusades, it's interesting you should bring up the Crusades. The Crusades on the surface were to save the Holy Lands from the Saracens, who were, of course, Muslims. But Crusades were also opening up trade routes to the Middle East.
Do you know much about the Knights Templar and such?
Not a lot, no.
Because that would be fun to talk about.
Yeah, we'll have to read a book on them.
Yeah. I mean, that's a cool one. But all right, so is there anything else you'd like to say about this?
No, I think it's scary. And last Thursday night, when I'd come back from New York, I stopped at the tavern and was talking to Bacchus and Dan Weinrich and a few other people, and I took out my phone to check a score because we were talking about who was winning what baseball. And when I opened my phone, it was on the news, and that was when Israel had first attacked. And I said, "Wow, this is serious. This is big time. This is serious." So I think we have more surprises coming. I don't think this thing is just going to fizzle and go away. I think it's very scary, and hopefully it will contain itself to just between those two countries and that area. But it's a serious war where billions of dollars of munitions are being expended, billions of dollars in damages, and the resolution is a change of. If the objective is a change of heart in Iran, that's not going to happen. They're not going to change.
What about a regime change in Israel? What about a regime change in Israel?
Well, they're a democracy. They change regimes all the time. You have to get elected.
Netanyahu been in power for a long time?
He's been in and out of power,
since like 1995 or something?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't people think that maybe a regime change should happen in Israel?
There are people in Israel who don't like Netanyahu. Absolutely. He's come very close to he was out of power a little while, then back again.
Yeah. How does that happen?
Just like like Trump was out of power. And
but not for as long as Netanyahu.
No, we have term limits in the U.S. 2 terms of 4 years. They apparently don't have that in Israel, nor do they have it in England or other.
Well, when does Netanyahu go out of power? When is the next election?
They have a form of government that's similar to the English. If you lose support in the parliament, then they form a new government, and that's when you get kicked out.
So then, who takes power after Netanyahu?
I don't know.
There's nobody in line?
Oh, there's always people that want his job. Yeah.
And maybe there needs to be somebody in there that
can
go to a negotiating table.
I'm not sure that there's probably a real pro-peace segment in Israel that would not have attacked Iran. And whether or not they ever come to power, I don't know. I think Netanyahu is a good wartime leader like Churchill was. As great of a wartime leader as Winston Churchill was, the year that World War II ended, 1945, he was voted out of power by the Liberals, the Liberal Party, and the Labour Party it was, which was the Liberals in England. So he didn't last forever.
I don't know. Maybe a new change in Israel. Yeah, I got to go too. Maybe a new change will happen in Israel as well. Yeah. So we'll see. Well, I really appreciate you talking about this because it's a current event.
Gonna wrap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Love it.